the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome. Welcome in. Hey, I am Chris Harris, which is convenient because this podcast is called the Harris Football Podcast, so if my name was something different, that would be embarrassing. Thank you so much for listening. Much appreciated. I mean, at this point, the songs, they are just pouring in, and they're all great. First of all, so many talented people who listen to the little podcast that could, which is amazing. And hey, even if you're not the greatest singer in the galaxy, some of the lyrics that you write, they're just so great. They refer to the show and me and the guests and fantasy in general. All are welcome. Make your songs. Send them to heyharris@harrisfootball.com. Or even if you just have an idea, you can send along the idea. Maybe we'll match you up with someone to make the song. Anyway, I mean, man, no further delay. How good is Josh Boyles? This is a song written from the perspective of Carlos Hyde. It's a little Jimmy Buffett tribute. It's called Trashbagville.
Nibbling all day, least a call and run place. There's just nowhere to go. In San Francisco, we're out on the road. We're always stuck in third and long. Wasted awaken in Trashbagville, searching for the tiniest hole. Some people claim that the line is the blame, but I know it's all Colin's fault.
It's all Colin's fault. Mr. Kaepernick. How great was that? Josh Boyles, a singer-songwriter. Just so great. Great job, Josh. Remember, all the mixtapes from the show are posted in full at harrisfootball.com.
Today's kickoff.
On today's show, first we'll have a Thursday night preview, and then, you know it, you love it, it'll be some Flexual healing, where I took a whole lot of your flex questions, threw them into a giant Excel spreadsheet, and culled the most commonly asked about players so we can figure out the right neighborhood for making your flex decisions. We'll have a song from one of our favorite indie bands of the moment, Wrathborn, who has a record I've been playing a lot. Really like this song. And finally, no matter how bad your fantasy team has been, you can always take a shot on DFS. Craig Clark will come aboard and we'll talk about Week 7. You do whatever it takes to make sure your business runs efficiently, but constant trips to the post office can get in the way. With Stamps.com, you'll be able to spend less time at the post office and more time growing your business. Stamps.com makes mailing and shipping easy. Use your own computer and printer to buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter, any package. Stamps.com does all the thinking for you. With the digital scale, it'll calculate the exact postage needed and helps you decide the best class of mail based on your needs. Join over 500,000 small businesses, including mine, that use Stamps.com and never go to the post office again. We do use Stamps.com on the little podcast that could. When you win trivia and get swag, you can rest assured we used our digital scale and save time using Stamps.com. Right now, sign up. Use my promo code Harris for this special offer, a 4-week trial plus a $110 bonus offer including postage and a digital scale. So don't wait. Go to Stamps.com and before you do anything else, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in Harris at Stamps.com. Enter Harris.
Thursday night preview.
Let's Seahawks, Niners, and these are two Jekyll and Hyde teams and two sets of Jekyll and Hyde players. You know, we're to the point now, 6 games into the season, where our preconceived notions of what teams are they have to start withering and fading, and the Seahawks defense, a little bit of an enigma. Like, the personnel is really basically the same. I think I certainly would rather have Byron Maxwell than Kerry Williams, but otherwise pretty much the same names. And on tape they show flashes of brilliance, but teams are starting to scheme them a little bit, like trying to force Cam Chancellor into coverage. And, he just couldn't do anything when he had to cover Greg Olsen last week. If Anquan Bolden's healthy enough with the hamstring, and as of right now, I think we expect that he will be, I'd imagine the 49ers will do their best to get him rolling out of the slot, see if he can get Chancellor as his matchup, because I think that's one the Niners can win. And yet the Harris Index statistically tells us Seattle is still a very bad matchup for opposing receivers, for quarterbacks too. They've made Colin Kaepernick's life hell even when Cap was consistently playing well, which, let's face it, he really hasn't this year. So, man, tough to trust any of the Niner options here. Carlos Hyde, seeing him collapse like that with a non-contact ankle injury, that was scary. Of course, he came right back in the game, so my assumption is probably not that limited. And it's a bad week for buys, so he stayed inside my top 20 running backs. Just saw Jonathan Stewart do some work against Seattle. I think you just have to hope for volume. Certainly game flow absolutely can get the better of him, but you could have said that other weeks too, and he performed okay. For Seattle, I don't think you have to even watch Jimmy Graham all that closely. It'll be obvious. If the Seahawks carry over the game plan from last week, which was basically feed Graham the ball, Graham, as a result of that, is back inside my top 5 tight ends after a 1-week hiatus. Marshawn Lynch, I think good thing he found the end zone last week, because it wasn't all that impressive an afternoon otherwise, but, the best thing is the snap count. He got 49 snaps compared to 8 for Fred Jackson and 2 for Thomas Rawls. So that potential controversy got settled real quick, and you go ahead and you use Lynch. As for Russell Wilson, interesting guy. I would say that some of the warts that he's probably always had as a thrower are now becoming more obvious as the Seahawks don't dominate quite so much on the scoreboard, don't dominate quite so much on defense. We know what he does well, right? He keeps plays alive better than even Roethlisberger, better than any quarterback in the NFL, a ridiculous length of time. He always seems to move to the right place. He takes off and runs. I love all that. As a pure thrower, he's certainly got all the arm you'd ever want, but he's not nearly as accurate as he could be. And sometimes his decisions aren't all that good. I think defenses can fool him a little bit. He's number 6 on my list this week. I mean, if he's your starter, you probably just go ahead and keep using him. He gives you the safe baseline because he's got 5 or 6 fantasy points, it feels like minimum, that are just going to come from rushing. And I love that. I own him in La Liga. I'm all about Russell Wilson there. But 0 300-yard passing games, only 1 game with more than 1 passing touchdown. Hasn't rushed for a touchdown yet, although that's, I think, a little fluky and should turn around. I just would say you use him, but lost in all the angst over quarterbacks like Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck is that, Russell Wilson hasn't been great either. We're sponsored today by BetDSI.com. I have an account there. They really are my online sportsbook, and let me tell you why they should be yours. BetDSI, they've been around just about as long as there have been online sportsbooks, and they don't do drama. They get A-plus reviews on several sportsbook review sites, and it's because the website's always up, the customer service is great, and they pay you when you want your winnings. This week, maybe you'd like to play a couple NFL games, and I look at the lines, and I'll do my typical thing of being surprised by point spreads. I'm surprised the Panthers are only giving 3 to the Eagles, and the Colts are only giving 4 to the Saints, both at home. I think my instinct would be take those 2 home favorites, which, I always say probably means the double reverse lock says take the road teams. You never know for sure, but I definitely have fun trying to figure it out. And you can too. Start a new account at BetDSI.com, and when you do, enter my promo code Harris10, and within a couple hours, they'll put $10 into your account. That's BetDSI.com, promo code Harris, no space, the number 10. And as I say, when we're talking about this stuff, I play these kinds of things in moderation, in pretty low amounts, mostly for fun. But if you have problems with moderation in this area, seriously, please take a few minutes and check out gamblersanonymous.org for help. That's right. It's time to get, what did we say on Twitter? Vaguely aroused in our Flexual healing segment. You did send me hundreds of tweets asking for flex advice, and I picked out the 7 most asked about players this week. My goal here is, yes, I'm going to try to help the specific question askers, but also, these players are probably on the minds of many listeners. Should I flex this guy? And hopefully I can put you in the neighborhood of the kinds of players I would, in fact, flex, helping the most amount of people possible. That's what we're all about. So the number 1 player by far, probably by double, who was asked about, Christine Michael. Everyone wants to know if they can flex him in Week 7 against the Giants. And, I guess with good reason. He's not someone you drafted very highly. Probably didn't draft him at all, so you weren't planning on having him, but here we are. Sounds like there's a chance he has a bigger role coming after the Cowboys bye. So can you sneak him into your lineup for some upside? Josh Landrum asks Christine Michael or Dante Moncrief. Robert says Christine Michael or Jordan Matthews, Duck Hands Jr. himself. Someone whose Twitter handle I lost in a freak Excel mishap asked Christine Michael or Michael Crabtree. Gooch Garvin says Rashard Matthews or C. Mike in a PPR. Mike Underwood, Christine Michael or Leonard Hankerson. Bruce Wayne, Christine Michaels or Kamar Aiken. There were others. Believe me, I tried to pick a representative group. All right, so Michael kind of represents a philosophical flashpoint this week. It's like when you're a ranker of fantasy players, you have to decide, do you want to encourage people to go all in right away based on, potential and upside and, let's face it, rumor? Or do you want to rank a player lower such that you're essentially trying to discourage them this week because you really don't know about workload and, maybe instead of using the guy, we'll use the week as a data point for research about the guy. So in Michael's case, I put him number 22 among running backs and number 24 in PPR leagues. So I think with that kind of rank, even though there are a lot of guys on bye, I think you would probably have to say I'm willing to take a chance in some cases. I mean, if I'm comparing him to Leonard Hankerson or Kamar Aiken or Rashard Matthews, I know there's risk, but I think I go with Michael. Comparing him to Crabtree, again, I think maybe Michael is shopping in a slightly better neighborhood. But someone like Moncrief, whose ability I really do think the world of, and who I think has carved out a relatively clear role, I think I go Moncrief. It's Jordan Matthews, it's Duck Hands Jr. That has me fascinated. I think it's the perfect crossover point. Matthews has been a pill. He gets usage, he just drops the ball. But Michael, you talk about pills. What a tease he's been. And we're having to deal with this guy again. And it should be noted, we're basing all this hysteria off something someone saw in a Monday practice after a bye week. But, I do believe there's probably a better role there for him. I don't think the Cowboys should be blown away by anything they've seen at running back from anyone else so far this year. It's a tough call. That's the neighborhood for Michael for me. I think I probably give him the upside nod over Jordan Matthews, but I do think Matthews might be a little safer. I think that's, Christine Michael, not someone I describe as safe this week. So the second most asked about player was Stephon Diggs. And in fact, Greg Hayes asked Christine Michael or Diggs. And Bradley asked Travis Kelce, Christine Michael or Diggs. So even when questions weren't about Christine Michael, they were about Christine Michael. We had other Diggs questions. I'll dig a couple of other Diggs questions. Gustavo Alonso says Diggs or TJ Yeldon. Joe Salerno in a PPR. Diggs or Andre Ellington. BS also half-point PPR. Diggs and Andre Ellington. All right, so you just heard me say, Michael, I rank kind of higher than I should because I'm encouraging you to take a chance. then you can rank a guy a little low and say, I know he's got tons of potential, but maybe wait one more week and see if the workload stays real. And my rank of Stephon Diggs at number 40 among receivers is going to look really dumb if you're only considering the past 2 games, but I put him there not because I think he's bad, but because I'm worried Charles Johnson comes back. And we have to remember, we were saying the exact same stuff about Johnson, who's actually bigger and faster this time last year. Obviously, Johnson has done nothing. I didn't rank him, and if he winds up inactive again, I promise I'll be hiking Diggs higher. But, despite Diggs' production, I'm not 100% sure Johnson loses his spot in 2 receiver sets because of an injury. 32% of Teddy Bridgewater's dropbacks this year have been with fewer than 3 receivers. And in today's NFL, it's a pretty high number. Okay, so, none of which is to say you're dumb for thinking about starting Diggs. You heard Liz Loza on this very show yesterday, and she's willing to buy in right now, which is a completely defensible position. So, I think I'm a little more circumspect for 1 week only, which is to say for Gustavo, I'd be playing Yeldon, assuming he's healthy. Any true starting running back, for that matter, I'm playing over Diggs. I think I'd use Christian Michael over Diggs too, but, I admit the usage for both is unknown. That could look like a really stupid call. Ellington is interesting. He hasn't played many snaps at all lately. And if you went Diggs, I'm totally good. I think that's a fair neighborhood, though. PPR, maybe I do lean towards the receiver. Carlos Hyde, who, as I mentioned earlier, has a stout-looking matchup against the Seahawks Thursday night. So did Jonathan Stewart. He did some good work. So we had some legit questions here. Matt Rosso asks Anquan Bolden or Carlos Hyde in a PPR. Steve Farah. Kamar Aiken or Carlos Hyde in a PPR. John Raposo. Allen Robinson or Carlos Hyde. Luke Bettis. An ailing Carlos Hyde or Dante Moncrief. And Dixon Steele says PPR. Steve Smith or Carlos Hyde. I feel like you're going to say Smith, but I'm leaning Hyde, and I need to be talked out of it. Yeah. Dixon, you're right. I think I would play Smith. I'd play Smith most weeks, to be honest. Craig Clark and I are going to talk about him in a few minutes, DFS-wise, but, that holds true for commissioner style, too. And Luke brings up the phrase, ailing Carlos Hyde, and that's a good point, because we saw Hyde come back in the game last week and play a lot, but we don't know for sure, and that needs to be factored into his risk. Having just seen Stu Beef do some work, I think I use Hyde over Aiken no matter the format. And then Smith, I think, he's playing for me. The other guys are tough. Bolden, Allen Robinson, Moncrief. If it were standard scoring with Bolden, I think I'd go Hyde. But since it's a PPR, it's legit, I could see sitting Hyde for all those guys. Robinson has his own leg issue. Sounds like he'll go. He's really tough to bench right now. So that's the neighborhood. And in this case, I might actually pick the receivers. Speaking of receivers, Martavis Bryant got some questions. Andre Martins asks Martavis Bryant or Justin Forsett. JD asks Bryant or Chris Johnson. Eric Martinez says trying to avoid a flexually transmitted disease. Lamar Miller or Martavis Bryant. And Fantasy Advice asks LeGarrette Blount or Martavis Bryant. All right, if Big Ben plays, Bryant gets way more attractive to me, to the point where I could see him, inside my top 10 with so many good receivers on bye. But if Landry Jones is the quarterback, I think Forsett and probably Lamar Miller go for me, especially if I'm looking for the safer baseline. We know Bryant can score a long one, and so his ceiling is huge, but feels like the baseline with that quarterback might not be that safe. LeGarrette Blount in a game against that Jets defensive front, I think I go Bryant no matter who the Steelers quarterback is. And Chris Johnson, yeah, that's the right neighborhood. If you're looking at my ranks for Martavis Bryant, I think that's the running back crossover point. I think that one's a gut truster. I'll say Bryant, because I didn't love how Chris Johnson looked on tape last week, but he definitely could bounce back. He'd been pretty good up until that point. All right, so let's go quicker for a few more guys. Dion Lewis got some questions. Trems says Dion Lewis or Jarvis Landry. Kelly says Michael Crabtree or Dion Lewis. Nick Bebb says Dion Lewis or Brandon Cooks in a PPR. Brandon Coates says Dion Lewis or Steve Smith. So, it's worth looking at my running back ranks. You'll see. I'm not scared off Dion Lewis-wise based on last week. The Jets feel like a Lewis game to me. You think you throw around the big defensive front. You don't try and run through it if you're the Patriots. So I have Lewis, close, borderline top 10, and that means probably he goes for me over Landry, Crabtree, and Cooks. And, let's face it, at this point, I'm sort of like joined at the hip with Steve Smith for this week. Jonathan Stewart mentioned his big game against Seattle. Justin Thurman asks in an email, Stewart or Golden Tate. Jeff Crawford asks Jonathan Stewart or Michael Floyd. I see Stewart or Travis Benjamin, Stewart or Jordan Matthews. I have to say, I like that these questions aren't getting carried away on Stu Beef because it was one game and because the Eagles are a really bad matchup for an opposing running back. Yet, I think in all these cases, I probably go with the running back. I think Matthews and Benjamin are close. I would be okay with that as the crossover point. And it looks like finally Mike Evans. Harrison asks Kelsey or Gates or Mike Evans. Justin Gwynn asks CJ2K or Mike Evans. Ryan Hall says Frank Gore or Mike Evans. And I see, Justin Forsett or Mike Evans. All right, so Mike Evans, coming out of the bye. Tons of upside. If you're an underdog in your fantasy matchup, I'm cool taking a shot on the big play. I think we say that every week about Mike Evans, the multi-touchdown game that we saw from him last year. I also admit we're really still waiting for it, right? We're waiting for that production to click every week for Evans and Jameis Winston. I don't think I can get away from Frank Gore or Justin Forsett. Once again, feels to me like Chris Johnson is the crossover point. I'll probably even use one of those elite tight ends over Evans. We're also sponsored today by DraftKings, and if I haven't convinced you to try DraftKings yet, I do think you're being a little stubborn. Remember the first time you started playing fantasy football and you told a friend or, your uncle or you heard some radio host and they were saying, man, why do you need fantasy football? That's pretty lame. Can't you just enjoy the game for what it is? Why do you care so much about numbers? Well, turns out they were kind of fuddy-duddies, right? Well, now it's several years later, and DraftKings really is another great way to play, and if you haven't tried it, I hate to say this, you're kind of being a fuddy-duddy. Seriously, don't knock it until you've tried it. Yes, you can definitely play the big money pools and try to hit the millions, and that's awesome, but you can also play in smaller contests with your friends or even head-to-head, and it's the same kind of challenge as your fantasy league now, but you get to pick a new team every week. I really like it, and DraftKings will give you a free contest when you sign up and use my promo code Harris. I recommend it. Don't be a fuddy-duddy. That's DraftKings.com, promo code Harris.
Harris's Music Digression.
We're psyched to be able to keep playing you songs from some a little bit lesser-known bands who are nevertheless awesome and deserve recognition. Today's act is called Rathborn. Luke Rathborn, he's from Maine, so he's a New Englander who lives in New York now, and his record, Soft, it actually came out in 2013. I was kind of surprised to see that, but I'm just getting around to it now. Apparently I'm slow. And Luke was kind enough to let us play a cut from his record, Soft. I hope you'll check out the music, maybe consider, buying this song or even the whole record. Again, this is Rathborn, and the song is called Deal.
Today's guest. DFS Talk, we've got the key. It's Clark on the pod. Watch out for his knees. Play on daily, follow his lead. We go head to head, you roll out for free. It's time to play.
And of course, that music means today's guest is Craig Clark, our DFS expert. You can follow him on Twitter at PCClark59. Craig, I'm told by you, it was a pretty good week last week.
Yes, it was a very good week. I hit 190 points on most of my tickets.
Nice. And how many tickets would that be?
It was 6.
6 tickets? All right.
Yeah, so, I didn't hit 190 in all of them, but I more than doubled my money.
Nice.
You'd think hitting 190 points would do better than that, but it was very competitive. It helped to have DeAndre Hopkins on all my tickets and Chris Ivory on most of them.
Nice. Listen, it's good to hear about the success stories. We're all about trying to help folks fill out winning tickets no matter what kind of game that you're playing on DraftKings or FanDuel. For this week, for week 7, I have to admit, so we have some pretty good offenses that are off.
Yep.
Right? We got Packers and Broncos are theoretically a good offense, and Bengals and Bears.
Lots of players to be disappointed with on
That's right. That's right.
On your ticket.
And plus we have a London game and a Thursday game and 4 teams on bye. Oh, I mentioned the 4 teams on bye. I kept looking at options to put together for my 50-50 this week, and I kept thinking, when I looked at every single player who even vaguely attracted me, I kept thinking, everyone's going to have him.
Right. And the pricing, I'm a little annoyed with the pricing this week because, to put it mildly, but I've been avoiding going out on a Twitter flame war with DraftKings.
It's probably not one you're going to win. It's probably good.
Right. But Gurley is ridiculously priced. Martin is ridiculously priced. Martavis Bryant is really cheap. And I just feel that everybody's going to have those players. They have good matchups. That leaves everybody with the same amount of cash remaining, so all the same good players will be taken after that. So all the cards are going to look an awful lot alike. It's like compounded. The buys compounding with the pricing is going to make a lot of similar looking cards.
So go ahead.
Looking for ways to differentiate, basically.
So Gurley, Doug Martin, and Martavis Bryant are the 3 that you think are going to be on an awful lot of cards.
Right, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so I had the same experience, and actually in my 50-50, I wound up feeling like I could bet against Doug Martin. I could bet against Martavis Bryant as long as Big Ben isn't in there. Big Ben's in there, Martavis Bryant's making his way into my every single lineup I do. But if he's not, if it's that Landry Jones Oklahoma kid, we're UT guys. We look at the Oklahoma kids with crossed eyes a little bit. I could not bet against Gurley, so he wound up on my cards. I just feel like you always say, like you taught me, when a player is that attractive with a matchup against Cleveland, coming off a bye, looking like he looked for the previous 2 weeks, I think that's the most important thing, is like you watch the tape on this guy and you say, hey, is Adrian Peterson wearing a Rams uniform? Is young Adrian Peterson wearing I felt like you taught me, if you don't pick him, you're picking against him. Yeah,
for sure. And I think Gurley is going to be the highest. Well, Bryant might be the highest, but of the running backs, I think Gurley will be the highest.
Interesting. What percent would you say he gets this week?
Carlos Williams hit 49.8 or whatever. Gurley, I'm thinking at least 35. Could be 40.
So it's like you pick him and you hope he does well, but realize in the doing well, all it's going to do is keep you level, and hopefully you differentiate yourself with your other players.
Yeah, this might be a good week for AP. This might be a good week to spend elsewhere.
And not take Gurley?
I'm not saying not take Gurley, but don't take them all, though I think I took them all. I didn't take Martin in the card I published.
Gurley, Martin, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but I took Gurley and Bryant. You're also going to end up with the same expensive wide receivers then as everybody else.
Yeah, I think I can get away from Martavis Bryant, I have to say. That 88-yard touchdown or whatever it was, like longest in the league so far. I was on Sig Bloom's podcast, and he made the comparison that I am now totally stealing, although due credit goes to Mr. Bloom. Josh Gordon, right? You saw that play, and you thought, like when Brian Hoyer used to throw passes to Josh Gordon, it wasn't about Brian Hoyer. It was about getting Gordon the ball in his hands and letting him run. And, at that size and straight ahead speed. And, for a while there, Josh Gordon did make a play every single week. But, man, Landry Jones, I just don't know that I trust Landry Jones to put Bryant in a position to do that again and again.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying Landry Jones is not your quarterback for this week?
He is not, and it's kind of why I think I'm willing to fade Bryant a little bit.
Uh-huh.
I'm on record. I think that Steeler offense, when Big Ben is back, and maybe that's this week, but when he's back, I think that offense is going to be the best in the league. They're dangerous. I don't think the defense is as good as it's shown, but they're and Bryant's price has got to go up. But I think I'm willing to fade him this week. Is that stupid?
I don't think it's stupid, simply because everybody's going to have him.
What's his ownership going to be? If you think he might be the highest player, what's your projection for him?
35-ish,
okay,
maybe 40.
Nobody at the Carlos Williams 50%.
That was
astounding, right?
Right, that was astounding.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins and the guy with the weird haircut on the New England, they both hit above 40 last week too.
The guy with the weird haircut, I guess that's Julian Edelman.
Julian Edelman, oh yes, that's his name.
I think you were just teasing me with my disdain for Euro-style haircuts. I do sort of have a disdain for... I watch the World Cup and I say, come on, guys, you care about... if you spent that much time dribbling as you do on your hair, I think you'd be a better soccer player.
You can imagine Edelman going to the grocery store in his bathrobe with his hair sticking out.
I really can't. I think he cares about fashion way too much. All right, let's talk about some more players. Let's start at quarterback. Mm-hmm. The guy who I wound up picking for, so I did the 50-50. I was really looking for maximum stability for 50-50 this week. I just give me the guys who are just going to give me their averages, right? And so I wound up with Carson Palmer.
There you go. Yeah.
And I stacked him with Larry Fitzgerald. How do you feel about that? That's my number one stack of the week.
I have a card that does just that. It's such a sweet matchup against the Ravens. I think it's nice and safe. When I build my cards, I end up taking a different quarterback on each one. I like to think that I would just go with my best one, but the score has been spread out so much that I end up taking a different guy, but on each one. But Palmer is definitely on one.
Do you have a stack, like a quarterback receiver stack, that you
Yes.
are playing beyond the Cardinals?
Let's see. Yes, I have Rivers with Allen. I have Stafford with Johnson. I pretty much always have one.
Okay.
And you won't believe this last one here. It's Jameis Winston, Doug Martin.
Okay, man, that's an interesting stack. The quarterback running back stack is a little less.
Mm-hmm.
But you are super down on Washington. I noticed that from the column that we're going to be it's on Vice Sports right now. We're going to be putting it up by midday on Thursday on our blog on harrisfootball.com. Several times you mentioned that Washington super banged up and Tampa coming off a bye. This is one, if you're betting, it sounds to me like you would take the points and take the road team here.
Yes, I think Tampa Bay is just going to dump it off to Martin very often, like they did against Tennessee, and that Winston is going to play a nice safe game. I think that's what they think is their path to victory. But again, that's predicting game flow.
No. I mean, I don't think it's so much predicting game flow. I think you can look at Washington and say super banged up in the secondary. Brashad Breeland is starting to look like a legitimate starting corner, which is interesting considering he didn't start the year. I don't know what they were seeing in training camp, but he's the only player in that secondary I think is any good. And I don't think you're necessarily predicting game flow to say you think Tampa's a good take the points. You know what I mean? So. Mm-hmm. Interesting. So Winston is your bargain of the week. On DraftKings, I know he's 5,100.
Yeah, he's really cheap.
And I wound up thinking Brian Hoyer looked like an okay. I don't think he's a good player, but I think the Dolphins are being
overexcited this week.
Yeah, overexcited about the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm. I like Hoyer too. I've got. I don't have Hoyer, but I do have Hopkins on a few tickets.
Right, and so all right, let's fast forward to wide receivers. I looked at the board, and obviously Gurley stood out to me on DraftKings as being ridiculous value, like stupid, too much, too little money. I think is it 5,000?
Yeah, he's $2,000 too cheap.
Right. But
or at least 1,500.
But then I looked at sort of the universe of players, and I thought to myself, all right, price independent. If I was going to pick the one player who's going to be most owned in any given week, including one against a Miami team I don't think is great on defense. DeAndre Hopkins was the one. Based on what people are seeing from him, it feels like matchup proof, quarterback proof, workload proof. What's at 8,600 on DraftKings and on FanDuel? I assume is he among the top 2 or 3 expensive receivers?
He is the top.
Number one in FanDuel, yeah. So given how expensive, what do you think his percent ownership is going to be?
It's going to be around 20, 25. I don't think it's going to be as much as last week, but just because he went up so much, he went up that extra, $1,200 or whatever it was.
Yeah. What was he last week?
His price, I don't have it written down. It was in the 7s.
No, I'm saying what was his ownership?
Oh, it was like 42.
Wow, that's crazy. It's that's millions of people.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Again, I mean, they have 4 wide receiver slots.
Right. That's DraftKings. Yeah. Okay, so how do you feel about spending the money on Hopkins? You're not feeling like he's going to be so owned that it's impossible not to make a decision on him, but would you say he's a tentpole?
He's close to being a tentpole. I was buying a little bit into the hype of Miami, worrying that Hoyer's going to get sacked.
Right. All of a sudden, that pass rush looked like it had some teeth.
Yeah, so that's what I was worried about with Hopkins, so I didn't put him on every card.
Okay.
I have Gurley. I actually have Devontae Freeman on a lot of cards. I have Brian on a lot of cards.
Let's talk about Freeman.
Okay.
As a tentpole, that surprises me because he's so much more expensive than any other.
Yeah, he's so much more expensive, and I was looking for a place to spend some money where I didn't think he's going to be well owned, but he's not going to be nearly as owned as Gurley or Martin. And I was looking for a place to spend some money that I thought might differentiate myself, and I was very comfortable with Freeman.
So that's sort of like that's an interesting counterintuitive play, saying, all right, now people aren't necessarily going to see value just when they look at the price tag, but there's almost no price tag you could put on Freeman compared to his fantasy points so far that would not make him good value. If he continues to do what he's been doing, you could say $10,000 is still worth it.
Mm-hmm. You get the 40 points or the 35 points, you're like, I'll take it.
Right, and it almost doesn't matter what you paid because there's no combination of players who would have cost you $10,000 that would have gotten you as many points as Freeman. So Freeman as a tentpole is an interesting sort of. That's a bet, obviously, that it continues. It doesn't feel like it's a bad matchup against Tennessee at all.
Yeah, and it's positive correlation with me in that I've had success with him. So.
Right. Does it feel to you like so? I didn't go with Freeman, and it's not because I've said he's maybe somebody you could consider selling in commissioner style. It's more because I was scared off by the price tag. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like I won 7 weeks in a row probably at the end of last year because of Odell Beckham? I just kept betting on him. It's same vibe off of Freeman.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. It's the same vibe. I see him catching passes. As long as he catches passes, I'm willing to go with him.
I think he might be number 2 in the NFL among running backs in receptions. Mm-hmm. I think Theo Riddick is number 1, maybe by 1 or 2 catches. But do you have any sleeper appeal in Theo Riddick with the mess in Detroit?
I almost played him last week. So yes, I do like him. I don't have his price right in front of me. I'll get to it.
There's a little bit of sleeper appeal there, just as a usage basically. So you got Zach,
so it's $3,400
on DraftKings.
If I need that price, he is definitely in the top 2 or 3
because of the PPR. I don't think we think he's the lead back, but how's he not getting 10 touches a week, and how is 8 of those not a catch given what they've done so far?
He's averaging 12.5 points per game.
Sure, and but you also have to realize to start the year he wasn't really part of the plan.
Right, I'm checking this.
Right, and so it's Zenner's out for the year. Abdullah, question about trustability. Joik Bell, question about health. Seems like the one constant in that backfield would be.
I think he'll get you 10 points. He's got a low floor. Yeah. I mean, a high floor.
High floor, yeah. No, you're right. Low ceiling, maybe not so much a GPP type play, but maybe a good head-to-head cash game type thing. All right, so more running backs. Latavius Murray. I like the matchup against San Diego, too. Do you have any concerns about the fact that Murray was benched basically 2 games in a row before the Raiders' bye?
Big concerns.
Yeah. Did he wind up on any of your tickets?
Yeah, he ended up on the ticket I published.
Oh, okay.
He's not on the others. But I took him when they played Cleveland. It was another weak running defense, and he got 26 carries, a few receptions.
Yeah,
so I'm thinking if this is the week.
I own him in so many commissioner style leagues. Please, can we just go back to using Latavius Murray? Please, I would be very pleased. I've already
this is the week for it.
All right, well I hope that's right. I've already talked at length about Christine Michael as a flex. What do you think of him as a DFS play? He's minimum priced in DraftKings. I assume he's close. He's got to be around minimum price in FanDuel. Is that right?
I'd have to look it up. I don't think he's minimum in FanDuel, but I'm not sure.
But he's close, right?
Yeah.
What do we think of him as a fill-in? I mean, I've already talked about being a little bit wary of him as a flex.
Yeah, I don't like to go for the minimum guys. I went with Rawls once when he was minimum, but
it's workload. That's the problem. The problem is workload. We just don't know. And yes, this may be the cheapest that you ever get them, but it's also the most uncertainty you're ever going to get as far as how they're going to use them. Like,
right, it's a flyer. It really is.
Yeah, but don't you think it's a flyer that's going to be owned?
Yes, definitely. I mean, as far as that price point, people are going to need him. And he's not minimum in FanDuel. He's 5,600.
Okay, but isn't it the exact wrong combination to say, all right, I know that this guy's a flyer, plus if I take him, I'm not differentiating myself from enough
it
of
hurts.
the crowd?
I mean, it's because you need the $3,000. You're stuck with it. You're like, I can't make a compromise anywhere else.
It just feels like that's not the way to go to me. I mean, what's Michael's ownership in DraftKings going to be?
I bet it's somewhere around 10%.
See, I mean, if I take that much of a flyer, where like, what's the percent chance that Kristen Michael is the definite starter and touches it 20 times? Like, not. What's the chance that he winds up scoring a touchdown? I could, but it's tough to predict. Like, I just think that, and plus I have to share him with 10% of the people on draft. I just feel like they're right.
And those players often, I mean, this is anecdotal, but it just feels like they get 9 carries for 40 yards.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly feels to me like the most likely outcome, that you don't necessarily get Michael as a pure feature back to start. They want to see what he looks like, right? Steve Smith, I feel like that's a price that if you're going to criticize the Gurley price, like, why is Steve Smith so cheap on DraftKings?
It's really tempting.
I took him.
I took him too. I'd taken him in about half my tickets, I think.
Yeah, he's 6,200 on DraftKings. You compare that to Julio at 9,100 and DeAndre Hopkins at 8,600. You wrote in your notes, take him anywhere against anybody, and maybe there's some fear about the Cardinals' defense, but come on. I mean, they don't throw to anyone else. As long as he's healthy, he's had double-digit targets. It feels like stealing.
It does. It's a nice price.
Yeah.
I mean, you worry about like him wearing down. Like I listened to you talk about him in the beginning of the year about he will eventually wear down.
Yeah.
But it's not happening.
Well, we're to the point we're not even halfway through the season. Sure, they're probably going to come a point later in the year where his legs don't feel quite as good. But you know what? We're not in later in the season, and this is the beauty of DFS. Is we don't have to worry about it for now. We can just take him for what he is this exact moment. There might be a week where he falls off the table, and we'll be sorry we took him. But I can't imagine his price is going to stay this low this long. I mean,
I don't understand what DraftKings does sometimes. They see obviously Smith had a low percent ownership last week, which probably goes into their
I'm sure that's
equation.
All right,
but the guy who won it all, he had him. He had Alshon Jeffrey too.
There you go. So run through me real quick the published lineup, and then I'll hit my 50-50 lineup.
All right, I took Rivers for again. I seem to always take Rivers.
Did you have him for the big game last week?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
So that's one where you're just going to keep going. I mean, I think it's a great play for DFS. I'm scared of him for commissioner style, but just because eventually Phillip Rivers always has that 4-game stretch where he gets 9 fantasy points every week.
Yeah. But like Steve Smith, it's not happening yet.
That's right. Exactly. It's a perfect DFS play. You why not go? It's like the Gary Barnidge play. Just keep playing him, right? I mean, it'll go bad eventually, but just keep playing him.
Yeah, you're making money right now.
Right. Who else?
I have Gurley and Murray.
Okay.
I took Keenan Allen, who I often take a lot. If he plays, I'm still watching that.
Right, he'll play. I think the hip thing is, they've already said he's all right.
I've got Steve Smith. I've got John Brown because I want any part of the Arizona pass offense this week.
Love him. Just love him.
Gates. It's very hard not to take Gates.
Yeah, he's 5,000 and Gronk is 8,100. Yeah.
And Gates is 50 points in 2 weeks. And then I have Brian as the flex.
Martinez.
And I think I took the Rams defense. this week against Cleveland.
Right.
But I've changed it to the Falcons, but we'll see. All
right. I almost think I'd stick with the Rams if I was choosing between
the
those
Rams
two.
are much cheaper.
Yeah, and plus I think they have both opponents are bad offensively, and the Rams had a bye. I don't think the Falcons are all that good defensively. I think they've benefited from some easy opponents and some crazy lopsided scoreboards. So that's one of your GPP, trying to make $1 million type lineups, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's got Gurley and Bryant together.
Right.
But anyway, I'll play it.
Yeah. And so my 50-50, I've got Carson Palmer I mentioned. I have Todd Gurley. I went with Lamar Miller. What do you think Miller's ownership is going to be coming off a good week?
Like 8, 9, 10%.
Yeah, see, that's what I felt like too. I felt like he was pretty fairly priced for the fact that it's 1 week. On DraftKings, he's 4,600. I mean, we were complaining about Gurley at 5,000, and certainly, Gurley looked better and has a better matchup and all that stuff. But I think I'm gonna make a bet that the workload keeps going on Miller. I went with the Palmer Fitzgerald stack, as I mentioned. Brandon Marshall just feels so safe. Steve Smith just feels so safe. Dante Moncrief against the Saints feels pretty safe to me.
Yeah.
Panthers against the Eagles, stealing money. Have you seen Sam Bradford play quarterback? He is so bad.
They're winning because of their defense.
Oh, he is so. I mean, it's just turnovers and sacks are just going to happen. I feel great about that pick. I think I mentioned this in the Bet DSI spot, but I think bet the Panthers. You're stealing money. I don't think they're getting enough respect. That should be a 7-point spread. And then I was out of money, so I went Jordan Cameron. There were no tight ends. I couldn't help myself. I just had to go. So I've got the Lamar Miller, Jordan Cameron, Dolphins special stack.
Okay.
Not on purpose.
Hey, it could happen. It's just as likely as just about anything else except for quarterback and wide receiver.
Yeah, nice endorsement of the complete randomness of playing DFS.
Yeah.
All right, Craig. So I hope your winning streak continues and you wind up way in the black after this week. Would you say for the season you're in the black or right around?
I'm breaking even. This week made up for almost everything else.
Okay. Good. Well, we need those weeks, and hopefully we'll have I think what we need is some listener to hit it really big, and then and tell us. And we don't want any of the money, but we just like to report it. It would be fun to be able to. We won't use your last name if you don't want us to. But if you've been listening to the podcast and you have a big one, send me a tweet at Harris Football. Send Craig a tweet at PCClark59, or drop a note to HeyHarris@HarrisFootball.com. We would love to hear about it, and we'd love to give you some praise on the air. A lot of people listen to the show, right, Craig? We'd like to hear that.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks very much, and I hope you have a good week, and thanks for doing the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun as always.
And that's it. That's our show for a Thursday. Thank you again. Can't thank you enough for listening. However frequently you listen, whether it's every day or every so often, I am very honored to be in your brain however many times a week. It's awesome that you all seem to like the show so much. I certainly love it as well. Remember, on Thursday night, an hour before kickoff, you can come along to Film Don't Lie. I will answer your lineup questions, your trade questions, your DFS questions as best I can via live streaming video. Go to harrisfootball.com/videos and you'll find all the details. So I will see you then. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The end theme is Tooth and Claw by OU Villain. Subscribe to the Harris Football Podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.